Hey, what's going on, guys? Sean Mathis here, CEO and founder of Surefire Digital Media, co-founder, I should say, with my partner here, Doug. And welcome to the Insurance Hustle podcast, where we want to talk about all things insurance. And today we've got an exciting topic, thanks to Doug. We wanted to talk about what we would do if we started an agency today, what we would do different than we did prior to today's market. And so I think before we get there of what we would do if we started an agency today, let's kind of discuss, Doug, how we started our agencies back when we did, so that we can then figure out, okay, this is what we did, which is probably going to be pretty similar to what most of the guys listening here are currently doing, and then what we would do different based on what we know today that we didn't have access to years ago when we started our agency. So that said, I guess, Doug, let's first introduce kind of, for those that don't know, who might be new listening to the show, how did you start your agency, and what market were you in? What were your strategies, and kind of what did you guys do?
Yeah, so when we started, it was a scratch. I came on with a State Farm agent, and we were starting her second office. We were starting the second office from scratch, but we had the luxury of being able to tie into a lot of the I guess referral partnerships and kind of lead sources that she had for her first office at one point. But then we branched out from there and went and opened an independent office, started that from complete scratch, and really invested heavily in referral relationships and in kind of event marketing, getting out to community events, things like that, having a little booth, just baking all day in the sun, trying to get people to fill out lead cards, those kind of things. Yeah, it's always fun with those, but we did that, and then referral relationships were really big for us kind of starting. It had its pros and cons and its ups and downs on that side of things, but that's really what we primarily started with, and then kind of
let's talk referrals real quick. Are you doing referrals like from the community, from within your book? Because I always classify referrals into two categories. You got in-book referrals from customers, and then you've got community referrals from like B&I networks and other business owners and things like that.
So speaking specifically on the independent agency, when we opened that from scratch, it was referrals from marketing partners, so loan officers, realtors, car sales guys. Those kind of markets, because we didn't have a book to do referrals from, in-book referrals. When I was with State Farm, we were opening up the second office there. There was some in-book referral. We had kind of a referral program that we had set up in order to get the referrals to the second, but it was still primarily, marketing referrals, loan officers, realtors, car salesmen, that kind of thing, which, on some months was great, other months was horrible. It's a really volatile relationship to really have be a foundational piece in and of itself. If you're trying to build everything on that, realize really quickly that it's great when somebody calls you and says, hey, I have this person that just bought a home and they need insurance. That's awesome. And it can be a really layup conversation, but there's no guarantee that call's coming tomorrow again or the next day. And the amount of money and time that it takes to solidify those relationships and make sure they stay consistent for a variety of reasons that weren't on us, can be very problematic from time to time.
Absolutely. So just to give you some background on myself, I started scratch with Liberty Mutual. Before I did that, I was a team member with State Farm as well. And I can tell you, when I was a team member at State Farm, that was also a scratch agency, and they primarily did mailers, and they did super heavy on mailers, and then community events as well. And then as I went to start my book with Liberty Mutual, I was heavy on event marketing. I did community events. I started a networking group, similar structure to like a B&I type of deal. I just decided to start my own rather than join a networking group. We were called the North Texas Area Professionals. We had 8 chapters. We did monthly happy hours in addition to our weekly meetings. So our monthly groups would have like 200 or 300 people at our events. So we had a ton of people in the business community. Because I didn't have a client base, much like Doug said, there was no in-book referrals from which to rely on. So I had to rely on community referral partners, loan officers, realtors, car sales, finance guys, commercial bankers, things like that. And then cold calls was a big part of what I did. I would set up, 1 or 2 days a week and carve out half a day and just pound the phones. And then I would do some internet leads here and there. So very, I guess traditional, as you would say. But what I found as I started to grow and I started to get a customer base and, I started to, my name started getting out there. I started getting people who would call me off of Facebook. I started kind of doing some of my own marketing. I needed to scale and I needed to look at, okay, how can I set up systems and processes to scale this? And what I realized is that most of what I was doing was not scalable. The event marketing isn't scalable because you don't know if and when you're going to have an event, if it's going to be rained out, if the attendance that year, you're totally dependent upon whoever set that event up, their marketing, and whether or not they're going to get your target market out there to that event, and then they're going to have a good show. And then within the networking group, you never really could depend on a referral. It's great when you got it, like Doug said, hey, they're awesome and they close at a really high rate, but you don't know when you're getting your next deal. And it's not something that you can say, all right, team, we're going to grow 20%. And here's how. We're going to hope all these things work right. It's not a scalable solution, right? The internet leads are very unpredictable. They were so terrible. I would literally buy them and just put them in a pile and call them a month after, because if I was calling them, so was 15 other people, and I didn't want to get yelled at. So I would literally just buy them to have a pile to call 30 days after I bought them. Then I would start working them. And so as I started looking at these, how to scale my business and realized that nothing that I was doing was scalable, I had to really start to reevaluate my marketing. This was about 6 months into the business. And that was kind of the real game changer for me, was realizing when I was trying to put together a proposal, because at Liberty Mutual, you can't just hire your own sales rep. You have to put in front of your manager and regional manager as to why you need a sales rep, because they're going to pay for their salary, but you have to put a business case as to why. And when I tried to put a forecast together of why I need a person to help me, I couldn't do it because there wasn't any real sustainable or measurable, scalable marketing venture that I was doing to really justify getting another sales rep from a top-down business look. And for me, that was a real eye-opener. And I said, okay, I got to look at how I'm going to do this now, since I want to grow my business and I'm going to end up being by myself. The first place that I started was, okay, let's see what I can be more efficient at within the processes of handling the leads that are coming in. And that's when I started setting up my first true sales process, follow-up process, and I started putting together this little assembly line of what I would do when a quote came in, whether it be from an event or from a realtor or lender or from a current client that I was referring or wherever. I had a very systematic way in which I put people through the sales process. And that allowed me to get about 30% more productivity out of my day. And then I started looking at, okay, which of these marketing things can I cut? And the first thing I cut was events, because they were expensive. They were very hit or miss. It was, maybe one this month, maybe one 2 months from now, but they were pretty costly. You'd spend $100, $200, maybe $500 to get a booth at an event. And that was probably the most risky deal that I had. So that was the first thing that I cut. And I looked at that budget and started applying it in other places. But, Doug, let's look at, kind of bounce back to you from what you did. What was kind of the pivotal moment for you to realize that, hey, this isn't going to be a scalable way? And then if you were to start today, what would you do differently and why?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the kind of pivotal moment for me was, walking into the office, sitting down at my desk, opening the computer, and going, I literally don't have anybody to call today that is somebody who needs it today, kind of thing. It's all going to be, calling, cold calling, or calling, past leads, or, there's somewhere in the sales process, but I don't have anybody new coming in today to the funnel that is that quote unquote top of the pyramid to call, because my referral partners haven't referred anything to me. I haven't done an event in 3 months for event marketing because they're expensive. I mean, our biggest event that we did every year was, it was $1,500 for the booth. for us to have it for 2 days. And it was great. We would get between 700 and 900 leads every single year on that event, and it'd make our year. But then you look at years like this, like the agent that I worked with before still has the agency open and was banking on that event this year, and COVID happened, event canceled. That's 800-ish leads gone that she's not going to get this year, kind of thing. And $1,500 is a big risk to spend on that, because I mean, even though we knew we would get that from past resources, at the end of the day, once you get a month, 2 months out from that event, it's really just a name on a list again. I mean, they don't remember you specifically at the booth at that event anymore. And so, we're talking, I got to a point where I'm looking at this and I'm sitting, waiting, hoping somebody's going to call today with a loan that they just did that they need somebody on, or somebody who just bought a car or something like that. And that's when I realized it has to be something more that I can control. And those need to be pieces of the puzzle, but they can't be the foundational things, because I don't have control over that. I don't have control over if the event gets canceled. I don't have control over if they downsize ticket sales for it. I don't have control over if somebody sells a car, or somebody sells a house, or if the loan falls through. And those are all pieces I don't have control over. But what I do have control over is a list of names and numbers of people who at one point did say yes to a quote, whether that was a day ago or a year ago. They said yes to a quote. So what can I do to put in place, like you were talking about, that automated, or not automated, but that process, that system, that assembly line that you're putting somebody through to find out where they're at in that process, so that I can focus my time on the people that are interested today and let the rest of them just keep going through there until I get to that. And that led me to the point where, I need some kind of follow-up system that's there. And ultimately, that's going to have caps if you're trying to do it manually. I mean, so if you can find a way to do that automatedly, even better.
Yeah. So, for me, I think the big thing that I would do today that I didn't do back then is take the systems and automate that. See, like back then we didn't have automated. There was no automated anything. So I had like templated emails that I used to create, and then you could like set it up. I think it was like as a signature or something in Outlook, and the whole email would essentially be the signature. But I'd say, hey, this is when a quote comes in, send this, and it was like a drop down, and it would have a canned email that would go out. But I had to manually send it. And it was about 4 different steps. I had one for claims as well. So that was like as close to automated as it got. But now with true automation and being able to put the prospecting piece on autopilot, that is 100% the first thing I would do today is if I started an agency. And it's really the same thing that when I started the marketing agency, we didn't have any sort of CRM or marketing automation or lead management tool. It was still pretty much, making notes inside of a form system or lead pages or Wufoo or something like that. But we didn't have any true, I had a couple of email drips going, but it wasn't true marketing automation or lead management. And it wasn't until I put my first one in place back in 2000, I want to say 16 maybe, and I thought I knew follow-up was a big piece of what we were missing in the marketing side. It's the same thing in the insurance side. I was missing money on the follow-up piece, and in the marketing business, the first time I put a true lead management and true automated sales and follow-up process where a human being can't forget to follow up with somebody based on an action that they took, based on them opening email, based on them watching a webinar, based on them going to the website, whatever. It was programmed to make sure it went through this process. Nobody would forget, nobody would call in. And I made $136,000 that I could specifically attribute to that follow-up system that wouldn't have been caught otherwise, that would have fell through the cracks. And when I put that out over like 3.5 years that I didn't have that previously, it was like a $570,000 mistake that I ended up making by not having that in place. And if I look at that back in the insurance world, I can't even tell you how many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of premium in just the scope of 3 years that I was selling at Liberty Mutual that I probably missed or forgot about. You know, there's times when I'd go into my Facebook account and, you know, they came up that other mailbox that people would send you a message and they're not friends with you. And I would forget to check that thing. And there would be messages, you know, 10, 15 messages that were a month or 2 months old that I just totally forgot. If people like, hey, my policy's renewing, can you give me a quote? I just didn't even think to check that. And there's just little things like that. And I didn't have the technology to know every time somebody went to my social media page, or every time somebody went to my website, or every time somebody opened an email for me. Like, I had no way of knowing any of that. So I would send out these mass emails, but I had no way to know what was happening with it. I would just kind of like get my name out there, right? Like, so if you can imagine, if you were to send a mailer out to somebody and you had 10,000 homes in a specific zip code that you're like, hey, this is a really affluent market. These are my ideal customers. If I could own this zip code, I would be king of the insurance world. And so you start mailing that thing like crazy, right? Like, you'll get some results. But what if you could see every time somebody checked their mailbox and looked at the mailer that you sent them, and then you could tell when they opened the envelope, and you could tell when they put it on the kitchen counter, or when they threw it away, or, you know, when they cussed you out and, you know, burned the damn thing because they're tired of getting your messages. Like, what if you knew that and you had that kind of data? That would be freaking awesome. Well, you have that now. There's systems out there, and we've actually developed one that gives you that level of insight. And so, you know, the whole targeting piece, like, you know, the thing that most people do when they buy insurance leads is they're buying leads based on like their age, maybe geography, maybe auto versus home, how many cars they might own. Maybe they're, you know, buying leads that were requested within a certain time frame. But that's about all the insight you have. Like, that's crazy, because today there's so much more insight that you have now that we have as marketers that, you know, we make available to insurance agents. You know, things like demographics, age, gender, geography, most importantly, interests and life events. Why would somebody want to talk about insurance other than price, right? Like, if you're tired of playing the price game, you have to quit playing the price game, right? So, like, look and market to people and generate leads based on life events, things that people would want to, you know, discuss with you, but they may not be shopping necessarily. They're interested. There's something going on in their life, like they just bought a home, bought a car, kid went off to college, they got a baby on the way, you know, they got engaged, something like that. That's going to be a much more powerful conversation that's not going to be pre-driven, that you're going to be able to have. But you have to know that that's happening. With your traditional marketing pictures, you're not going to know that. You're not going to know that when you send these. You're not going to know that when there's just most of these traditional platforms, you're not going to know the level of that you really need to be successful. So you know, I'd say for me, what I would do today is I would get that foundation piece in place. I would automate the prospecting. I would get the most targeted and qualified data that I could. I would set up the automated marketing side of things. Like, I want my marketing to never stop. It has to be ever present. It can't miss a beat. And I have to have follow-ups that happen and track all of the people that are going to my website and that are responding and receiving the marketing. I want to know what they're doing with it. I want to know if they're clicking on it, if they're reading it, if they're downloading it, if they're saving it for later, if they forward it to a friend, if they respond to me. Like, all of that information I want to know, and then I want a system that's going to automatically follow up with them based on that information on levels that you really can't have, you know, when human beings are involved. You know, if you look at some of the top clients that we've worked with, and Doug can probably touch on this a little bit more in depth, because he works the operation side and you know, meets with these guys every week. But, you know, there's really two core ways of growing your business that you see prevalent today. You've got your inbound agency, people that are buying a shitload of internet leads or live transfers, or you have an outbound agency, people who buy data lists, lead lists, mailing lists, whatever, and they just pound phones and they're outbounding all day long. And one of which you're spending, you know, $10,000, $12,000 a month on leads and transfers and whatever. Most of those guys have not a clue what their marketing dollars are actually doing for them, which lead providers providing the actual best leads, where their highest conversion rates are. Like, most of them don't have a handle on that at all. They're just throwing money out there, and as long as the phones are ringing, they just keep shelling money out, right? And then your outbound guys, they have a much better sense of how many calls they need to make and things like that, but they're spending an enormous amount of money hiring, firing, training, employee benefits, things like this. You know, they've got a payroll of 5 or 10 people that they're paying $25,000, $30,000 a year or more in base salary plus commission. So you start looking at ROI on their employees, and they really start to lose track of that as well. They've got good call metrics normally, they've got a good call process and flow, but then when you say, okay, well, when you factor the lead list and you factor your commissions and base salary and employee benefits and overtime and all of that good stuff, what is each of your employees actually bringing you and profiting the agency? They don't really have any insight on that. And I think losing track of those numbers are really, really painful for an agency owner, and it really makes it hard to scale and really hit any true growth numbers when you lose sight of all of this madness going on, just trying to put numbers up on the board. Doug, what do you think? You know, and the guys you're working with.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I hear from agents all the time where, you know, I'm kind of both extremes of the spectrum where, you know, I'll talk to them and they start telling me about their team, and it becomes very apparent that their team's not producing for them, but yet they're being told all the activities, all the actions are there, and they don't have any idea one way or the other if those actions, activities are really happening or not. They just know, oh, John said he called. Okay, well, is it on a call list? Because if John's really called this person 50 times, then like he says he has, how has he not talked to him? Like at some point, the person's gonna at least answer the phone and tell them to leave him alone and cuss him out, you know? At some point, they're gonna be so annoyed, they're gonna answer the phone and say, stop calling. So, you know, something's wrong there. And I know for me, like you were talking about the Outlook templates, like I had a shared folder on our shared drive of a bunch of templated Outlook templates that my sales guys could, you know, click open, it would open an Outlook, drop the person's email in and put your signature in and hit send. But it took hours for me to create those templates. And anytime one of them came up or something needed updated on one of them, it took hours to add new ones and create new ones. And I was spending most of my time going through call reports to make sure calls were actually being made that I'm being told weren't having results, and then pulling call lists, creating templates for the team, you know, tracking their activities, and all because I didn't have a centralized system that could just keep track of all that with me. When the reality is I guess what it comes down to for me is if I were going to start my agency again, I want to talk to people about insurance. That's why you get into the insurance world, is to talk to people about insurance, not to create email templates and pull call reports and track phone logs and do all of these other pieces that end up taking so much of your time. I mean, there are days where it hit 5 o'clock and I'm like, all I did today was comb through reports to find who's the person that's interested to be able to call. And half my day was taken just finding that person. The other half day was trying to get a hold of them. And that's just not a scalable, successful model. Versus if I had some kind of automation in place, then I could have just been alerted when, hey, this person is interested and ready to talk now. Then I can spend my day just calling the people and talking to them about insurance, which is why I wanted to be an insurance agent in the first place, was to talk to people about their insurance and sell them insurance, not to be a data analyst and not to be a, you know, marketing analyst and a data provider for my team. That wasn't what I got into this for. And so automations are going to let you be an agent, not be a data analyst, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just kind of show you guys, you know, we're doing a lot of talking of automations and things like this. Yeah, I'll just show you guys a really quick insight, you know, kind of what we're talking about. These are some of the marketing campaigns that we have going for our clients. And what I would do 1000% if I start an agency right now today, I would start setting these up. These are automation maps and these are marketing workflows that we're actually running and putting together for campaign or for our clients who are all value-driven content, and it's all systematically going out. There's a calendar where you can see every single marketing piece and what day it's going out, so you know exactly when you're going to have leads pushing into your system. You'll know what's dropping, when they're dropping. These are going to be days that you can schedule for calls and follow-ups. These are going to be your lead days that are coming in, and it's very easy to track everything that's happening. You're able to see, we have a point scoring system. It gives you the probability of closing that individual and what that, how likely you are to close that lead based on their engagements and based on the actions that they've taken and the responsiveness that they have had to the marketing. So back to that kind of analogy of, what would you do if you had the, you had somebody who was, you could see what they were doing with your marketing, how they were responding to that direct mail, right? Like you could see somebody who took the mail out of the mailbox. You could see when they opened it. You could see when they read it. You could see when they were like, oh, let's put this on the fridge, right? Or, hey, let's set this on the counter and talk to my wife about it later, right? Like you could see all of that, and then you could respond to them accordingly, right? If somebody took it, hadn't even opened the mailbox yet, well, probably don't want to follow up with that person, right? Because they haven't even seen it. But what if the moment they pulled it out of the mailbox, you got a little notification that says, hey, John Smith just checked his mailbox and he's got your flyer in his hand. Hey, he just opened it. Hey, he just read it. Oh, he put it on his refrigerator. He's going to talk to his wife later about it. Like, what if you knew that? And that's exactly what we've created here for you guys. And rather than, using a physical mailbox, we're using virtual mailboxes. We're using digital media. We're using, campaigns that folks are finding on their mobile devices. So it's a very targeted and precise way to keep the marketing flowing. You don't have to constantly be working with lead providers and here's another $200 for this account. Here's another 40 transfers from this guy. Hey, where are you at with the, XYZ returns? And, there's some of these guys that are buying, 100, 200 leads a week from various providers. They have a staffed position just to fight with the lead providers for returns. Like, that's crazy. You shouldn't have to do that. If you're fighting with your lead providers for returns and things like that, it's probably not a good way to spend your money. Like that person should be servicing your book of business, not fighting with lead providers on returns and credits and bad data and things like that. So, I think definitely in today's market, like marketing automation and things like that might be kind of a new thing, but fast forward, we're ahead of the curve. Fast forward 12 months from now, you go and replay this thing, and everybody's going to be doing what we're telling you to do right now. We tend to be probably 9 to 12 months ahead of the curve by design. We were one of the first companies that were talking about Facebook leads, talking about video. Guys, I was telling my clients to do video back in 2012, 2013. And people today are still talking about social media being the wave of the future. Like, it's almost past, man. We're almost like past that at this point. Like, if you're not, utilizing social media and video marketing and LinkedIn and Instagram and things like that, it's not the future. You're already behind the curve. Like, we're moving beyond that because there's so many more opportunities and options available to us to not only automate the marketing, but automate the sales process, automate the follow-up process, and make sure that we're able to hit the same level of outbound that these guys who have 10 people are doing, making 150 calls a day. That's 1,000 to 15,000 outbounds a day, 1,000 to 1,500 outbounds a day. You're able to do that with technology and have the same level of follow-up and some. We've got some guys that are doing 10,000 or more outbounds a day with our system. And there is no maxing out, and there's no human element of losing track of these things. Or the same thing as a guy who's spending 10 grand getting 150 leads a week. We've got guys doing that. We've got guys doing, hundreds of leads a month, and it's all being worked by just a few sales reps, 2 or 3 sales reps. So you can hit the same production that guys that are spending $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month, and you can do it for a fraction of the cost with a fraction of the staff and be 10 times as precise because you've got technology behind you showing you every move that each one of these prospects is making, and there is no calling in sick. It doesn't matter if somebody loses because you've got access to all of it all the time, 100% transparency. It really is. If I would have had this back in 2000, 9, 10, 11, my life would have been 1,000 times easier. Doug, I'll let you close them out if you got anything before we wrap up.
No, I mean, I think you hit it right on the head that using technology makes our lives way easier today than it did in the past. Instead of running from it, we can start to recognize that this is the way it goes. I mean, in the last 3 years, we've seen all the major carriers, Liberty Mutual, Farmers, State Farm, Allstate, all come out with their own platforms for their agents to do with automation. Now, they're looking at it from a corporate perspective because that's where their liability is as far as profit for them. But they're looking at how to automate things and make the agent's life, in essence, their life easier by making the agent's life easier. But when you look at it from an agency level, some of those options may be valid options for you and may work perfect. But when you're looking at it that these corporations are going this route, it shows more and more that, as an agent, you really need to be going this route too, because it allows you to take advantage of all the hours of your day.
Definitely. Yeah, and guys, if corporate is making moves that you're not making, you're way, way behind, because these are like massive ships that have to turn and they're way behind the curve. So if corporate's moving to automation and you're like, wait, what's that? You're so far behind the curve. You should be like doing things 6 months, 12 months before your company has even thought about it. I know I was on a first name basis with my compliance people over at Liberty Mutual because I was always pushing the envelope of what we could do and, what was allowed and what was not allowed. And, you think of things like, think about how progressive, excuse the pun, but how progressive things like ride sharing is. And like technology is pushing the envelope in so many different industries that legislators and lawmakers can't even keep up with, writing laws for some of these new things that are coming out. You got the trucking industry, and you've got self-driving, semi trucks, and legislators trying to figure out, okay, who has the liability here? Is it the technology company? Is it the trucking company? If the consumer cuts them off, who's liable for that? So you should be doing the same thing, pushing the envelope on marketing and things like, I'm not saying step out of bounds, but at least thinking creatively enough that, it raises some questions and people are like, oh, wow, I never even thought about that. So if you guys want, check out our podcast, go to, just type in Insurance Hustle on YouTube, find us on Facebook. If you want to grab a free copy of the Insurance Marketing Blueprint, go to insurancemarketingblueprint.com and you can enter your information in there. You're going to get 7 days of free access into our Insurance Marketing Blueprint. It's basically a culmination of all the marketing strategies that Doug and I have taught over the years to thousands of agents across the country. We put it into a very easy to follow format. We've got a book on Amazon that you can grab as well. So check that out and make sure you tune in and check out some of our other episodes. Tons of freebies if you join our Insurance Hustle group on Facebook, and then also hit us at insurance-hustle.com.